DC versus Vampires issue 1, James Tynion the fourth and Matthew Rosenberg writing with Otto Schmidt on art.
Welcome back to DC, Otto.
Yes, welcome back.
Been sorely missed.
Yeah, so this story revolves around iVampire, who comes in
Andrew Bennett
looking like a character of like a post-apocalyptic western with his hat, shades, coat, and like wrapped up in bandages because he's out in the sunlight, so he's keeping himself covered up. And he's going towards the Hall of Justice, and this issue is him telling Hal Jordan what he's discovered and what's happened to him, and the threat that the vampires have on the DC universe. Basically, he was, what was it, his arch nemesis, his ex-lover.
His ex-girlfriend, who's the queen. Did you ever read iVampire?
No.
Okay, so it was pretty good. One of my friends loaned me the first trade. I always wanted to finish it. It only made it like a little bit past that first trade. But it was really interesting because it kind of like we see with Swamp Thing right now, it's very much part of the DC universe, but taking its place in a corner. But it had a really well built-in mythology with Andrew Bennett and his ex, who's like this queen of the vampires. But and from what I remember, it was very enjoyable. I'm sure this week in the New 52, we'll cover it pretty soon. This is I think it was a launch title on the New 52. I'm not too sure, but
I love how you don't know the title of that show.
No, I'm sorry, but give me the title, Pete.
Not So New 52 is the title of that show.
Not So New 52.
There you go.
That's much better than what I said. So,
yes.
But I like what it builds on here. That basically she's been keeping a war brewing. Like he doesn't like her because they stand at opposite poles, but she's the one being that has kept the vampires from overrunning the rest of the DCU.
Yeah. So the premise of this is that she's died, and as a result, the vampires have ran wild, and they've killed the Legion of Doom. Some of them are dead. Some of them have been turned into vampires, but Bennett finds them. He gets into the location. He sees plans for basically them taking over the world, and he finds a living Lex Luthor who's lost an arm and he's on his last legs. He's dying, and he wants him to deliver a message to the Justice League, and he gives him a vial of his own blood. And basically says, "Let them know that I'm the one who saved the world. Like me giving you this is saving the world because I'm Lex freaking Luthor. Damn it!"
It's so Lex Luthor, right?
It's very Lex Luthor. It's delightful. But then we get Vampire, Scarecrow, and Grodd, and Vampire Riddler. Although Vampire Riddler does not last long, because what we find out here is that Lex's blood is lethal to vampires. So I'm sure he does a reason for that. I'm sure he concocted something that's in his system, whatever it may be.
Yeah. So part of handing over his blood to Bennett was that he has to kill him because they won't turn him, right? We don't know why exactly. And Andrew Bennett goes to release his fangs. He goes, "No, like that, you have to use your hands." So right there, it's kind of built in, like, oh, okay, there's something up with the blood. And then as we see Andrew Bennett stab Vampire Riddler in the eye and him just drop, you're like, oh, okay. So yeah, definitely Lex did something to himself to keep him from being able to be turned.
Yeah. So we get this kind of montage of Bennett kind of wandering, trying not to be followed, going out in the daytime, and he comes to the Hall of Justice. But the twist here is that Hal Jordan's already a vampire, and one of the Wonder Twins, he sort of grabs him and kills him by making a Green Lantern construct blender and blending Zan down into a drink and drinks him. And kills Andrew Bennett.
He says it's a little watery. Which, if you know about Zan's power, he takes the form of water.
Yes.
So that was good line. Rosenberg or Tynion, whoever wrote that line. Perfect.
So it's setting up that there's already people who have been turned. The vampires are taking over. But notably, during all of this, he never actually brings up or gives Hal the vial of blood. He never gives him that. And it kind of sets up that maybe went somewhere else. And the final scene of the issue is that this vial of blood and a letter it was dropped off for Batman, which actually makes way more sense that this is kind of what the first port of call was, is that Batman's the one who might be able to sort of mobilize and do something with this information.
So what got me is when Bennett first shows up there, right? He's kind of bursting into flames in the sunlight, and Hal comes in and brings him in with Zan, and he mentions that the Justice League's off-world. And then there's a slip where Zan had said, like, oh no, they're here. And that's the first tell that Hal's being a little underhanded.
There's also a tease during the montage of Bennett being sort of on the run. You see Green Arrow kind of standing in the background as if he's one of the people hunting him. And there's also a line earlier in the issue where one of the villains almost says green something, but you don't get to see what he's going to say. So it's almost setting you up thinking that Green Arrow's a vampire, but what he was actually going to say is Green Lantern. And here, sure enough, Hal's the one who's already been turned into a vampire here. So it's delightfully vicious the way he just like burns iVampire, and then the way he blends Zan, like all of it's just delightfully viciously sinister. And he's got, unlike a lot of vampire stuff, unlike a zombie, which obviously we've seen in Deceased and other things, vampires get to have a personality, they get to have attitude, and Hal has that the entire time as he's just gleefully murdering everyone. And then of course Aquaman shows up and he just starts to play cool. He's like, no, I was just doing things, nothing serious.
Is it really dusty in here? After Hal's just burned a vampire. That's another fun line. But yeah. No, it's seeing. So we don't get to see full Green Arrow, but just knowing that we're gonna get to see Schmidt's Green Arrow again, I'm very excited. Just on the art.
Honestly, the cover kind of gives away that he's probably not a vampire, at least to start with, because. And it's all just a red herring for the fact that they were setting up Green Lantern to be the one who's already a villain. But I mean, it's funny because obviously this is out of continuity, but you kind of get the feeling that it's set in recent continuity. Obviously Alfred's alive, so that's a big thing. But other than that, the fact that the Wonder Twins are in the Hall of Justice still feels like, that's recent kind of vibes. Like it feels like it's set. Obviously not in continuity, but it's sort of branching out from a specific part of continuity.
Right. So, but yeah, no, and the art, I mean, it's bathed in red for the Legion of Doom sequences, which I think works out really well.
All of Bennett's like story as he tells them what's going on is all bathed in this red watercolor kind of vibe.
Looks really, really nice, and it adds to that whole vampire aspect. And I mean, I can't say enough other good things. I mean, the Hal Jordan twist was, I thought, really nice. But when you think about it, it's kind of, I don't know, it's not really telegraphed, but there are breadcrumbs there.
The second he says, "If you told anyone else about this," I'm like, "Oh, he's about to be villain."
Yep. Yeah, and that's right before he shows his fangs, right? Like but yeah, so just him being the first Justice League, as far as we know, vampire in the Justice League, we'll see how that works. And how are vampires in the DCU, like, can they affect Wonder Woman and Superman, right? Because are they magical beings, are they biological? I don't remember from iVampire, but it seems like whatever Lex did to his blood cues me in, like, maybe it's a little bit more biological.
I feel like this will come up, like, they're going to address this. There's no way they're not. I also like
I know that. I'm just, after this first issue, these are the questions that I had. How's it going forward? Because on that plan to take over the world, they have Superman listed, they have Shazam, but are those people that are threats to them, or are these people they want to turn? I don't know. Let me go back to that page that they have. Superman, Constantine, Wonder Woman, Swamp Thing, Shazam, Zatanna, someone called Majestic, Vandal Savage, Ra's al Ghul, and Joker on the bottom. And they're also talking about what looks like making a satellite into a shield to plunge the world into forever darkness.
Yeah, which actually, probably one of my favorite little details about this is that Green Lantern can go out in daylight because his ring can protect him from the sunlight. I thought that was a nice little touch. Because
and that's how he burns Bennett alive, right? Where he says that they're, the fact that his ring is a form of light, it allows him to have the ability of all forms of light. So the UV light that he can filter out, he can also create, and that's how he burns Bennett to death in the Hall of Justice.
Yeah, but it's also kind of it also adds to the red herring, because you see Hal out in the sun. Not that you're suspecting him to start with, because you wouldn't have any reason to. But if the thought does occur to you, what if he's already a vampire? You might discount it by going, oh, but he was out in the sunlight. So,
and Hal can't catch a break in these.
Admittedly, I do think that part of this is because they knew they had to answer this issue, because if they didn't actually explain how he was out in the daylight, we'd all be sitting going, well, he was out in daylight.
Yeah.
We'd all be asking the question. I mean, we'd all probably assume it was the ring that protected him, but they kind of had to do it in this issue. It felt like a necessity, but at least they had fun with it by immediately using it to kill Bennett afterwards, because I think that's what made it feel okay. Had it just been the explanation and nothing else, it would have felt a bit clunky, I think, because it'd be like, oh, we had to explain this because otherwise everyone's going to ask.
And I like it because it makes him seem that much more vicious too, like the fact that he seems to be enjoying it as he's doing it. But I say, Hal can't catch a break between this and Deceased, man. He was zombified and now he's vampified. So I guess he's just fun to mess with.
Yeah. No, it's a fun time. I'm enjoying the characterization. I'm not going to lie though. I'm kind of glad that Bennett was killed off in this first issue. I was a little bit worried early on that he was going to be the main character because he's a vampire. I know what people like about Vampire. I never read it, but I really didn't have any interest in reading that 12-issue story with Bennett at the center of it.
I don't mind. He's a member of that Justice League Dark too. Back during the New 52, he's a good character. I mean, he's basically Angel at that point,
Okay.
So,
but
yeah,
I'm cool with them being dead, so we can focus on more interesting characters. So, that's a fun time. Art's really good. Schmidt, let me say, the bathed in red gives it this apocalyptic feel for a large portion of the issue. But mostly it feels like they're just having fun with a wacky concept, in the same way that Deceased kind of did as well. Now, this gets to have more fun than Deceased potentially, because it's just the vampires have attitude. What will be a true test is if it can hit the emotional beats that Deceased also did, because so far I wouldn't say this is, and it's not as a fault, because there's nothing in this issue that should have been trying to hit an emotional beat. But I'll be very curious to see going forward into future issues if it can hit those things, like, because everything in Deceased with like certain characters dying, so then we had their sons, or we had their loved ones like try to continue the legacy or stuff. There was a lot of good or just reactions to like other characters dying and things like that. It'll be interesting to see how this deals with that going forward. I'm curious, but all right, what are you giving DC versus Vampires issue 1?
This is a 9. I really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm just going to go with a straight 8. Had a lot of fun. Looking forward to issue 2. Very easy read as well, might I add. So, cool stuff.